Sam.
Mr. Parkin, the Friday night phone call. Did you do that for your whole time at Carlton, or your whole coaching career?
Yep.
How long did it take you?
Oh, most of Friday night.
And what were you...
Particularly waiting for Peter Bazzasto to come home from Moonee Valley.
You would have had a level of being autocratic and you're in charge, but you just by nature would have had to do personality management as well with those blokes, wouldn't you?
I think
and you know who we're talking
about. I know who we're talking about, and they were Sam, some of the, and how privileged I've been. Looking back, I didn't think so at the time because it was difficult when you're looking after, Perovic and McClure and Wow Jones and, Marku and Ashman and Ashley was pretty straight.
You leave out and Johnson and Buckley.
Oh, Buckley, another one. Dooley, who was the most introverted person I've ever met in or out of football. It certainly did, test me as a fairly new coach in the business.
The modern day player may not even be aware that in the old days that players had jobs.
No, they wouldn't see. And I think that at long last we've got some research that suggests that Sam, if you can get your players, and it's difficult to do because they are professional operators on huge salaries and the clubs ought to be making massive demands on their time and focus, etc. But what we now understand, if you can get your players' heads into something else other than their football in a sincere and committed way, they would be better footballers.
In saying that, it wasn't all roses, by the way. Many people consider that the Carlton footballers working at the stock exchange in the late 80s may have single-handedly brought down the economy, but I just wanted to point that out there. It wasn't all just all roses.
It wasn't all beer and Skittles, no, that's true, but there was a fair bit of beer and Skittles.
I am wearing what I consider your signature uniform from the early 80s. Did it bring back any memories?
It did.
The tan pants,
yeah, that's right.
The blue V-neck, and a pretty wide shirt.
Although
they weren't as wide as the flares. The tan pants actually, I couldn't buy any for the flares. Now,
still get them at the op shop.
I went to Bob Stewart's in Kew. Just for you, just for you. I was in the change.
I bought all my clothes growing up. I grew up in Hawthorn, and that was where we got all our clothes from.
This wasn't standard uniform for your assistant coaches or the club uniform at the time. This is what you decided. Is that fair to say?
Yes, that was my decor. It was my signature. My signature dress. Sam, you've actually got that right. And I had a bit of a following.
Oh,
not
really?
many, but there are at least 3 or 4 people I know who adopted the style.
I'll throw a couple of names at you, if you don't mind.
Don't throw them too hard.
No, it's all Jimmy Buckley.
I love Jimmy. He was one of the only bloke who ever whacked me as a coach. Yeah, punched me up after a game, but I've forgiven him for all that.
Really?
Well, I don't know whether he got Cole Kinnear first and I went to help Cole and I copped one too, or whether he whacked me first and Cole came in and he got whacked me trying to support
So this is after a game when obviously Jimmy's pretty upset and he's decided to just clean house,
it was a bit later in the night. It was in the understand that we had. They must have talked about the players. The understand, which was the nightclub in the Gardner stand underneath, where the change rooms are now.
What were you doing there?
That's a very good question. It's a very good question. I didn't frequent those sorts of places. He just had exquisite skills, Jimmy, and was as tough, that really tough, resilient nature. And he played with injuries and when he was sick and all sorts of things and still was able to perform like a lot of players. And no excuses from Jimmy. Jimmy was the one player that would never, ever he was always accountable, not so much responsible for some of the things he did off the field, but he was always accountable and responsible for everything he did on the field. I love coaching Jimmy Buckley. He was a unique individual.
Well, I can see why you sacked him. What about, Wayne Johnston?
Probably what I would call the best clutch player, if we use that term. The best big moment player I reckon the game has ever seen, not just the Carlton Football Club. Dom had the ability to do exactly what was required in the biggest moments of the biggest games. I can think of the start of the 1980 '82 grand final when we knew Richmond were going to. We had a little midget bunch of greats. I knew one would go down, warned the players it would happen, and Dom went out there, and if you have a look at his almost the first goal kicked of the game, he did it on just sheer tenacity. Just grabbed it and forced a goal. We were 3-1, I think, 3-1 before Richmond scored.
Yeah.
And then at the end of the game, I might be slightly out here, but I think it was a 3-1 difference. They were equally as good as us for that moment through to the end of the game, but couldn't make up the gap, which Dom was the one who set the standard in his approach to kick that, I think, the first goal of the game.
And also, so I have this, I know 87, you went there for 87, but I remember his first 5 minutes of that grand final where he pointed out that the Hawthorn had 5 in the square, so they weren't allowed to bounce it. He took the kick and not Madden, which was, by the rules, Madden was supposed to take the kick.
Right.
He kicked it down and Ken Hunter took a grab, kicked the point. Then he kicked, Jono kicked the first 2 goals of the game and knocked out Dipper. That's not a bad first 5 minutes of a grand final. Who did you have to coach less, Bruce Dahl or Ken Hunter?
Oh, a line ball. Bruce was so introverted, probably the best team player I have ever had the privilege of working with. If you could articulate it, Bruce would produce it perfectly, and they loved him. Everybody wanted to play near him because he was the team player. To me, is someone who does what he's supposed to do at the time he's supposed to do it, and he does that all the time. And that means you can be trusted, and teams are built around people who are trusted. Bruce would have been the most trusted player in the Carlton club. Criticised him once, I think, in a 6 or 8 year period that I coached him.
You remember what it was for?
Yeah, not punching behind, and I sent the runner out to him. And
wow.
He was very upset that I sent the runner out to him and sent the message back with the runner to tell Parkin I don't have the runner. So I never sent the runner to Bruce ever again.
Bruce's message back to you was, I don't have the runner.
That's right.
And you never sent it out again?
I know, I would never send the runner out to Bruce again. And Ken for what he brought, a bag of bones, 6'1" or 2, I suppose, played key position front and back, took more marks going sideways and backwards and in the air than probably any other player that I've ever seen in the game. Should have been killed multiple times. So coachable, hung on every word, tried to be the best that he could be in every situation, and became a very loved, for all the right reasons, a very loved person, and probably my favourite player of all time, I would think.
The end of 85, you finish at Carlton.
I was sacked, yeah.
But my question is this, when you got sacked, did you know that months away from arriving at the club were Kernahan, Bradley, Motley, Nailey, Doherty?
Sam, did I know? Who recruited them? Who recruited them?
Really?
Yeah, well, I was very much responsible for
It's even worse.
Kernahan and Bradley and people like that. I was a part of that process that got there, but yeah, it was a bit sad. But the nice thing, Sam, after the wash-up, is that when I came back the next time, they were all there, and I had the opportunity to coach some of the great Carlton people. It was sad because Stephen Kernahan is one of the finest men I've ever had the privilege of working with. He's got time for everybody. He's just as he is, Stephen. Braddles is probably the best prepared athlete that I have ever worked with. Maybe.
Despite your advice of either studying or working, he said, no, I'm going to be a professional footballer.
Yeah, we couldn't get him to work. He played a lot of golf and a lot of tennis. And
it's a shame it didn't work out
all
for him.
Those sort of things. Well,
The other thing that's come up in my previous chats with your former players include that a David Parkin hour was not, well, it wasn't 60 minutes, David.
No, it was...
How long was it?
A couple of hours usually. We'll be out here for an hour, but the Parkin hour got a lot of pasting over the time, I must admit. Yeah, well, as you've worked out already, you only have to ask one question. I've got verbal diarrhoea, so it was one of my problems as a coach. No meeting, no discussion, no training session was ever brief.
Okay, I should mention to everyone we have been driving for 4.5 hours, but I'm loving every minute. I'll go back to